Good morning, YouTube. So we're waiting for them to join us on YouTube. So we're streaming to two platforms as we do each week. Shout out to Tickety Tickety Talk because TikTok is where this was birthed. But for redundancy and to just expand the territory and to um, have a library, so to speak, of recordings, we are simultaneously streaming to both. So if you would like to, maybe you have to switch over from TikTok, you can always switch over to Pretty Petty Politics on YouTube. All right. So good morning. Hey, Katie. I'm speaking to the YouTubers. So during the lecture, I may switch my head. Feels like my laptop is lagging. Am I lagging, Katie? Because it looks like I am. I'm going to remove myself from the screen. We're going to try that again. Is it lagging? I'm trying to see what's going on with the YouTube. Okay, she said it is just a little. Okay, looks like it's Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. I see the enemy is trying to attack this stream, but right now in the name of Jesus, I just believe that all that's going to end and that we're going to be able to stream successfully without any interruptions and without any lagging, and that the recording will be crisp and as you deem perfect for today's recording. In Jesus' name, holy name, I pray, Yeshua, my Messiah, my Savior. Hallelujah and amen. So, if y'all believe, just touch and agree that the YouTube will pick up. It looks like it is back. It's still a little laggy, but I'm just going to trust God with this. And those on YouTube, if one of y'all could jump over to YouTube and just let them know that it's going to come together. I think it's where it needs to be though. But yeah, I'm a woman of faith, so I'll just talk about it. I really am about it. So good morning. Welcome to week 5. Welcome to week 5. I got my Topo Chico here. So no, I'm not drinking beer online. This is Topo Chico. So if y'all see me sipping this, that's what I'm sipping. I don't need no judgment. Now, if I want to have a drink, I can because I am in my house. But I wouldn't do that while I'm providing instruction. Plus, that's going to make me sleepy. All right. Oh, praise God. It's not lagging anymore. All right. So, good morning. This is week 5. Y'all, can y'all believe it's been 5 weeks? And there's been some drama. Well, not for us, but, and we're not going to even talk about it, but it has been 5 weeks. And I see it's lagging again. Devil, just gone now. Gone now. We ain't got time for that. Just gone away. Thank you. The enemy does not like to see you do good. No enemy. How about that? Who? Because you got enemy in the spirit and you have enemies in the flesh. All right. So we are talking about the amendments. Last week, I believe we left off with Amendment 8. Amendment 8, we were talking about bail, the Eighth Amendment. And I gave you the example about Kalief Browder. Kalief Browder was a teenager in New York City who was arrested for theft. I can't remember if it was a backpack. I want to say it was a backpack, either a bike or a backpack. But he was arrested for it. And because he would not admit to the theft, and he by taking a plea, and we're going to talk about pleas, because he would not admit to taking it, he had to stay in jail. Now, so before we talk about any other amendments or even delve deeper into the Eighth Amendment, there's some things I need you to know, because as I talk in community, serve on panels, teach in the classroom, whether my students are high school students taking college courses or if they're 60-year-old grandparents, because the spectrum is very large when it comes to who's in my classroom at the college. One thing that never fails is people perceive jail as prison, number one, and they perceive jail, and I'm talking about your county jail, your local jail, they perceive people who are held in jail as guilty criminals. And I use two fingers because it's two different things, right? Guilty and criminals. And I just want you all to never forget this. Jail is only a sentence if you've been convicted of a local law, like a local ordinance, a local law, right? So you may be sentenced to up to a year in county jail, right? But most people in jail are there being held until their trial. They're being held there until their trial. And I'm lagging again on YouTube. I need those of y'all on here who are believers to be just praying in the spirit, or just text your auntie, your friend, whoever is your prayer warrior, text them and just ask them to pray over today's recording, because I see there's something busy going on in here where YouTube keeps lagging on and off. But back to jail. So jail is a holding space for people who are awaiting their trial, people who have been transported or they're waiting to be transported. But overwhelmingly, the population in our county jails, the people who are there because they have not met the threshold or the requirements for their bail. Okay. They have not met their bail requirements. And that is why they are there. Okay. I hope that makes sense. I hope that's connecting for you. So I need everyone who can hear me, I need you to put bail in the comments. Bail in the comments. Go ahead and put bail in the comments, because we're picking back up off of the 8th Amendment from last week. So Kalief Browder was one of those people. Yeah, continue to put bail in the comments. Kalief Browder was one of those people who couldn't make bail. This is a child, his family just couldn't afford it. It is not uncommon. Like if you know someone who works for your local county sheriff or at your county jail, ask them about the number of people who are there because they can't make bail. And bail is not always this astronomical number. Bail can be relatively low. But we also have to think about our society. Most people in our society are not rich or wealthy, and even the middle class, many people in the middle class or the perceived middle class live paycheck to paycheck. Because as Biggie said, more money, more problems. So many people live paycheck to paycheck. And so they've budgeted out what their expenses are. Katie, I'm gonna talk about that too. Yes, they've also budgeted that out, but they also have just a small emergency fund. Like, you may have some leftover cash after you've put into your savings, or you put into whatever investment thing that you're doing. You may only have so much cash left on hand. It may be a few $100s. And anything can come up. It could be a car repair. It could be, if you're a homeowner, it can be a busted pipe. It could be an appliance goes out and you're having to wait for a warranty company. We're not even going to talk about that. But the average citizen or average person in this country, the average household, just don't have it like that. Okay. And let's just be real about it. I think oftentimes we think about our own positioning that we're not thinking about the positioning of others around us. And that's another problem that we have as a society. Go ahead and continue to put bail in the comments if you have not done so already. I just want to make sure that we are all on the same page. Okay. So Katie on YouTube has put in the chat that in her community, the bond requirement is 10 to 25%. And that is in most places. But I will tell you, Katie, in some communities, it's less than the 10%. So let's say bail has been set at 5,000, 10% of that will be 500, right? Or 25% of that. You could look at it. What would that be? 1,000, 250, 1,250, right? When we look at the bail, we look at the bonds that people are able to make. Oftentimes, it is less than the number that they were required, right? That was set. So again, we'll use that 5,000. So if it was 5,000, or we could say the 10% would be 500. Here in Harris County, a few years ago, it was less than that. You know, some were set at like, I ain't combed my hair this morning. I just unwrapped it and kept it going. Some were less than that. You know, it might be 5%. And even with that smaller amount, people still sat in jail because I think that might fix it. Oh, that's what I need to close. So I had another tab on my computer open, and I think that fixed my YouTube prayerfully. But they still don't make bail. There were some incidents a few years ago, and when I say a few, because 2020 to 2025 seems like 2 years to me, even though it's 5, because these past 5 years have just been a blur. But a few years ago, so that could have been back in 2020, or it could have been 23. I don't remember, but a few years ago, I remember 2 specific cases out of San Antonio, Texas, which is Bexar County, Bexar. If someone wants to put that in the chat, Bexar, Bexar County. I know it's spelled like Bexar, but Bexar County, Texas, which is San Antonio. I remember 2 cases where people died in county jail all because they were poor. No other reason. They could not afford their bail, and their bail was $500. That's $50, y'all. At the standard rate of 10%, the most common 10%, they could not afford the $50. Now you sit with that. And they died because while they were in jail, they did not have access to their medication. Also, while one of them was in jail, they died because of the temperature. All right. And that's just an example. All right. That's just an example. But many people, and I'm not taking up, see, when I talk like this, people who are opposed to, not y'all per se, but when I speak about the realities, people who are opposed to doing anything to improve our criminal justice system, they think that you are empathizing and taking up for criminals. And it's not about empathizing for criminals. It's just about cleaning up the system, period. And so if you're just joining us, this is Federal Government. We are talking about the 8th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. And so we're talking through bail. Again, the 8th Amendment to the Constitution. And so we're talking about bail. Okay. So we're talking about bail. Just need to close some things on my computer just to be safe. All right. So we're talking about bail, which is the 8th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. We have talked about the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Constitution consists of 7 articles and 28 with the star and asterisk on 28 amendments. Y'all, let me grab my phone charger because this live will drain my battery on my iPhone. Okay. So with bail or bail reform, I want you all to write in your notes bail reform, and then after the class, and when you get ready to go back over your notes and unpack what we talk about today, I do want you to take some time just to read a few articles. Maybe you read one from a left leaning site, and then you read an article about bail from a right-leaning site, and then you read one that is more neutral. So maybe your local NPR station has articles, or some other more neutral publication, right? And the reason why I want you to do that is so that you can see the conversations that are going on around bail. Here in Texas, we are in a our state legislature only meets during odd years. So they're meeting right now, and they only meet for 140 days. And so recently in the Texas Senate, they've shaped some new considerations around bail. So a Senate bill has gone through. It's not the law yet because it's gone through the Senate. It has to go through both chambers, then go through committee, be matchy, and then to the governor's desk. And it will. But if you are in Texas, you need to look at what is going on in our legislature in regards to bail. And for those of you in other states, because most of y'all are not from Texas, I want you to look at bail, put bail in, and then put your state and put that in your search bar. And so that you can see what is going on with bail in your own state. And maybe you put it by your county, because counties have certain rules that they've made about bail. Several years ago, prior to the pandemic, several years ago here in Harris County, and I use Texas as an example because this is where I am. I'm in Houston. But several years ago, good morning, we did bail reform here in Harris County. That is something else I want y'all to look at. I want you to look up why not just lawmakers, not just elected officials, but judges and lawyers, why they challenged the bail system, right? Why they challenged it, what were the legal outcomes of it. I'm not going to tell you. I want you to look it up. I want you to look it up so that you get a full understanding and not any of my opinion or my tonation included. I just want you to look it up so that you can understand just in one community the many facets that are involved in bail. So now I'm going to read I'm going to read the 8th Amendment to you. I'm just pulling it up. How did I do that? There we go. All right. So the 8th Amendment, very short, very short. This is one of those amendments by James Madison, known as the Bill of Rights. So it's one of those amendments from the Bill of Rights. The 8th Amendment provides excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishment inflicted. So excessive bail shall not. So we talk language in here a lot. What does shall mean, right? What does shall not mean? We have may not, we see may not, and we see shall not in a lot of our Constitution. Throughout the Constitution, that language is used. And I know we don't talk like that today, but we still utilize those words, and those words still matter today, right? So may and shall. Shall is being very restrictive, right? May is giving you option. Just think May we bloom. So May means you have options, like it could happen, it couldn't happen. So that's options. Shall means should not, bet not. You bet not, right? It's a requirement, right? And thank you for the feedback. Must, yes. You all have the right ideas, okay? So shall. So excessive bail shall not be required. Shall not be required, comma. A few years ago, a judge in the Hill Country, so like in the Austin area, I don't think they were in Travis County where Austin, Texas is. But thank you, Courtney. That is perfect. But in that area of the state, I almost said of the country. I mean, Texas, I mean, it used to be a country. But in that area of the state, a judge gave someone this ridiculously high amount. And this was like 2017, 2018, because I was at Texas Southern as an adjunct professor at that time, teaching like a full time, but that's a whole nother conversation, child. That is not for a live stream. But I remember this judge gave someone this astronomical, I want to say maybe like during fall of 2017 or either spring of 2018, but gave them this astronomical bail for this very not that serious violation or crime. And the judge did that not as a means of punishment, but this was during the time where lawyers and judges were pushing back on lawmakers and against bail bondsmen companies, because that's a whole industry with a whole lobbying group behind them. But they were pushing back on these big bonds, these big bail settings. So in a means of protest to show just how ridiculous bail can be, and I'm talking about one side of it right now, I'm going to talk about the other side of it in a minute, but just to show how exploiting bail can be, this judge, and I want to say it was a woman, she gave this ridiculously high bail just to show that the whole idea of it is not to be punishment, is not to make it so high that a person is restricted to jail. Bail in itself is intended, and I know this upsets people, but it is what it is. Bail is intended to be a guarantee that you will come to court for your hearings or for your trial or for your due process, that you will come to court on the days you are required to be there. That's what bail was created for, right? Or intended for. Because otherwise you're going to start getting into the cruel and unusual punishment, especially if someone cannot make, you hear that language, they couldn't make bail. That means they couldn't afford it. Now, there are certain circumstances. So now I'm going to switch to the other side. There are certain circumstances where high bail should be applied, right? And that it depends on the type of crime, right? So for, I can't say the M word, so I can say it on YouTube. I can't say it on Tickety Talk. But if someone unalives a person or is suspected of unaliving someone or a lot of someone's, then yes, it's not unreasonable to set their bail extremely high in the millions, or to not give bail at all. And there should be some standards about when that should be applied when you say no bail, right? Otherwise, if you determine someone is a suspect and you don't provide bail and they're innocent, right? You've just robbed them. You've just robbed them. Okay. Now, there are circumstances where people are accused of heinous crimes, whether they've done them or not, and they're taken into custody, meaning they're arrested, and they never see the light of day again, except for when they're being transported from wherever they're being held and taken to court. Right? So we have to be very mindful of how bail is applied in our country. So excessive bail shall not be required. So let's say someone is Luigi. All right, let's think of Super Mario Brother, right? Did he have bail? And if so, what was his bail set at? Let's look. Look it up. Did he have bail? Was he granted bail? Again, bail is, or the Eighth Amendment is, excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. Now, I don't think the framers, James Madison and the others, when they were writing this, I don't think they were meaning that people should not have bail, but it should fit the accusation and the person's own economic status, socioeconomic status. Okay. Did he have bail? Did Super Mario Brother, was he granted bail after the unaliving, after his arrest for the unaliving of the CEO back in New York back in December? I got one no on TikTok. Okay. That's it. Just one person gonna respond. He got no bail. Okay. Why? Let's talk about the why. Why wouldn't he have received bail? Is that reasonable for him not to receive bail for being accused of unaliving this one person? Is that the practice? Is that the practice and the standard? Okay. Because he's a flight risk. Okay. You know, sometimes when people are flight risk, they have monitoring devices and they are put on house arrest and they have to surrender their passport. Okay. Katie says his lawyer did not seek bail. Your lawyer does not have to seek that. The judge can determine that. But his lawyer could have asked for it too. All right. That's an example. All right. There's a current case in Alabama. Y'all got to follow this case. I was going to try not to talk about it today because I still need to do more research on it. Jania, yeah, no bail for unaliving. I mean, people get arrested as suspects for unaliving every day and they get bail. They get bail. Okay, they get bail. And Amanda, I think he was for a part of the time. Now, the thing about Super Mario Brother, he also was charged with both state and federal crimes. And we're not going to even talk about it. We're going to have to do a whole separate, live conversation about this case. I just been busy with work, and so I'm looking forward to my spring break so I can really dig into that. No, he was charged federally. So the federal government has placed charges on him for the Southern District of New York. So the federal, so the Southern District of New York has levied charges against him for that crime, as well as New York City, right? Or I can't even think of what county New York City is in right now. But I'm going to say it's Kings County. But anyway, they have also levied charges. So the state of New York, as well as the Southern District of New York for the federal government, have levied charges against him. All right. It wasn't that he committed crimes in 2 different states. Eating at McDonald's isn't a crime. I mean, it's a crime to your body, but beyond that, it's not a crime. So where was I? So we'll talk about that more. I'll prepare us for that. But when we look at how bail is assigned, people, I was going to talk about the Alabama case. So I want to say his name is Damien. Let me make sure that's the right name. Yes, Damien McDaniel. Put that in the comment section. Damien McDaniel. And this is a case I want y'all to follow. Damien McDaniel. Okay. This is a case where it's not unreasonable to not give bail. All right. Damien, it's IEN, but yes, Damien McDaniel. Thank you, CC. Damien McDaniel, IEN, was charged with 3 or more unalivings. Actually, it's in the teens. I want you all to follow the development of that case. That case is out of Jefferson County, Alabama, Birmingham. I want you all, not right now, but put that in your notes, because when I say law enforcement, lawyers, professors, psychiatrists, people will be studying this case for years to come, or these cases involving Damien McDaniel. Okay. For multiple unaliving for hire incidents throughout Central Alabama, because I don't know where all them took place. I want to say Jefferson County alone, but it could, because the investigation is still very active, it could be even more. But that's the case I want y'all to follow. And then when you go back to your notes, I want you to ask, would bail have been reasonable? Would house arrest would have been reasonable for that circumstance? All right. And remember, the names of the people that I'm giving, they have not been convicted of any crime, or, well, they may have been previously convicted of crime, but they have not been convicted of these particular charges yet. Okay. They have not been convicted of these particular charges yet, whether it's Super Mario Brother or if it's Damien, right? You see where I'm going? So for those purposes, we do not, for those purposes in this space, we do not call them a M-worder, okay? And I'm using code on YouTube because I'm also streaming to TikTok, and TikTok don't let you say certain words. So if I say something strange like that, it's because TikTok is very restrictive of the language you can use. So instead of saying the K word or M word, I say unaliving. Okay. And just as a reminder, the K word does not apply to people because those are M's generally. All right. That's a whole nother conversation. And that's just legal jargon for the most part. But back to Damian McDaniel. I need you all to follow that case. I need you to put in your notes why no bail. All right. It's a huge case that is still developing out of Birmingham, Alabama. And this week they had another press conference just like 2 days ago that really just blew my mind because I was like, oh my God, really? Like for real? Okay. But let's go back to Kalief Browder. Kalief Browder was accused of stealing this. He was accused of stealing this. And this is going to represent a backpack, right? Kalief Browder, K-A-L-I-E-F, Browder, B-R-O-W-D-E-R. Kalief Browder was accused of stealing a backpack. All right. And Kalief Browder ended up in Rikers jail. Right. Rikers jail. We know Rikers to be this very oppressive place, a very dangerous place to be held. But that's where he was sent as a teenager. And he ended up spending 3 years on Rikers Island, 3 years on Rikers Island for a crime he did not commit. But he also spent more time at Rikers Island than he would have had he plead or even if he had been sentenced for the crime he was accused of. All because he could not afford bail and because prosecutors kept passing his file, his case along. One went on vacation, like people go on vacation, people leave, and the case is reassigned. Nobody took the time to look at this case and say, you know what, this kid has spent so much time here already, just let him go. Or to say, well, he won't take a plea deal and he can't make bail. Like, let's give him community service or something, or let's find something. No one did that over the course of 3 years. He never got his speedy trial. And I'm glad you asked that, VD Fails. He never got his speedy trial. Never, ever got his speedy trial. Instead, one of his brothers, found a lawyer who advocated for him and began sharing his story. And that is how he was released. And then he went on a media run to tell his story. And there is about it's less than 8-minute video produced by ABC. So if you go on YouTube or here on YouTube and you put in Kalief Browder, ABC, there's like an 8-minute Nightline segment about him where you get to hear his story in his own voice. And it's heartbreaking because his life was snatched from him. And long before his own demise, you realize that his life had already been taken from him long before his own self-inflicted wound through hanging in his own home. You hear from his mother as she talks about how he would just pace this part of their driveway back and forth as if he was still in his cell. He spent many months. He spent a lot of time in solitary confinement while at Rikers because of his experiences at Rikers. He was abused not just by inmates, but also by correctional facility employees, some which is caught on video, some which is shown on video in that same segment that I just mentioned. So when we talk about bail, or bail is brought up in your local community, I want you to think about it not in a broad way where you lack understanding for people's situation, but I want you to think about Kalief Browder. What happens when someone simply just cannot afford bail? not that they're guilty. So when someone innocent can't afford bail, they have to sit in that county jail and face whatever type of situations are going on in that county jail for days, sometimes weeks, sometimes months, sometimes years, until their day in court. This is why a lot of times people take plea deals. A plea deal often is not uncommon for people to take a plea deal for a case they did not commit, simply because they cannot take jail. They cannot take lockup. And why should they? But also, why should they plea for something that they did not do? What happens to our legal system, our court system, if everyone accused of a crime refuses to take a plea deal? What would that do to our criminal justice system? It would clog it. It would lock it up. It would be the worst. Like, think about your worst constipation ever, and now multiply it by 10. That's what would happen to our legal system. And I know that's gross to think about, but it's also a gross injustice when people are forced to take pleas to crimes that they did not commit and lose so many of their liberties because of it, just so that they don't have to spend time in jail, or so that they have a reduced sentence down the line if they are sentenced, or if that plea involves prison, which is a whole nother beast. All right. So I know today's class, the tone and the conversation is quite different from the rapidness of our previous classes, but this is something that really taps into a passion space for me when it comes to justice. Okay. So there's another case, so to speak, and it's not even really a case. It was an accusation, it was coercion, it was a conviction with it was a very speedy trial that led to a very speedy execution. And I want you to look up, and this is from about 80 years ago. I want you to look up George Steiny or Steiny Jr. That's spelled Stinney. Stinney. All right. I want you to look that up. Put that in your notes. I want you to look that up, and I'm going to put that on the screen for YouTube. But in that case, this child, I think he was 14 years old. He was out of North Carolina, one of the Carolinas. I want to say it was out of North Carolina. And in that case, he was accused of, he and his little sister were out playing, they were out, and he and his sister were black, two little white girls passed them. They were out playing too. And later they were found unalived, and he was charged, convicted, and unalived himself for, he didn't do it, but he was unalived by the state in that county. He was unalived for the unaliving of those two little girls. The thing that bothers me most about this case, there was always another suspect, but he was easy. There was another suspect that just happened to come from a very affluent family, who would later, prior to his own demise, admit to being responsible for those three, and I'm including George in those three unalivings, because of his own actions. All right. Now, folklore says that as George was going to the chamber to sit in the chair, he was carrying a Bible. This is what folklore says. I don't know how true it is, but it don't surprise me if it's true. And because he was so little, he was a little child, this is back when kids didn't eat all those hormones and additives and preservatives. They ate real food, slaughtered on their own family farms. The food was just healthy. That's all I'm saying. So he was a little kid, scrawny kid, and you can see in his pictures that he was a scrawny kid because he did not fit the chair that was designed for a full-grown man. That the Bible that he was carrying was used as like a booster seat. I don't know how true that is, but it's not unreasonable to believe in understanding the history of things that have occurred in this country. So I want to say in 2014 or during President Obama's administration, he was posthumously exonerated during the Obama administration. But this child didn't get bail. Matter of fact, his family was ran out of the town, basically told pack up and leave. Okay. So I'm sharing this with you so that you can think of why we need to be mindful of bail. Now, these are extreme, and some people are saying I'm being dramatic, and maybe I am, because I can be. Okay. But I just want you to know, no, the Green Mile was not this child, this little boy. No. They are the complete opposite of when you look at those one, when you compare them just physically. Okay. But I'm sharing this because when we make these decisions, when we create new legislation, when we vote on legislation, this is why voting is important. This is why understanding is important, so that you critically think about things that are being proposed by your legislators if they come to a vote to the people, because a lot of times these things never come to the people. It just comes to the people through their representatives. But we have to think about how things are being applied across the board. Okay. So we need certain standards. We need certain standards. All right. So it's not uncommon for people to take plea deals for crimes they did not commit. Earlier, in one of my videos, oh, here it is. I had to find it. In one of my videos, from early January, I talked about a book by John Grisham. This book, Framed. All right, Framed by John Grisham and Jim McCloskey. This book tells the stories of people who were wrongfully convicted, right? And it's more common than you think. It's more common than you think. I know we're talking about the Eighth Amendment. I'm going to get back to the Eighth Amendment, but I just have to, this is my passion, so I just have to tell y'all these things so it opens your eyes and you can begin to look into it yourselves. All right, so back to the Eighth Amendment. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. Let's take the cruel and unusual punishments part. When someone is facing capital charges, they will always plead that the penalty for capital crimes, capital unalivings, TikTok, that the penalty is cruel and unusual. All right. that the penalty is cruel and unusual. They will also plead with the 14th Amendment, talking about their right to due process and their, their right to life and liberty, right? We have to think about that. They will also argue their equal protection under the laws. We have to think about that. I don't know if any of you've ever served on a jury or that you may serve on a jury. You need to think of the law when you're making decisions. Okay. You need to think of the finality of the decision that you're making. Has everything been presented to you really? Does it tend to illustrate that this person is indeed responsible? Because the decision you make can be the end of days for that person. Another situation I'll talk about is, I'll talk about this Texas case. Anthony Charles Graves. Anthony Graves was accused of unaliving a grandmother, like a grandmother in her mid-40s. She's like 44, 45. A grandmother, her 16-year-old daughter, and 4 little babies. Not babies, but babies in the sense of little kids, ranging from probably age like maybe 10 to 4, 3 little girls and a little boy. So 4 little ones, a teenager, and the teenager's mom, and the little one's grandmother. So 6 people were unalived. And this happened in Somerville, Texas. Back in like 1994, 95. All right. So, let me find what year that happened. Oh, 1994. That's when he was convicted. So he was convicted in 1994. No worries, Shawana. He was convicted in 1994. He would spend 18, and I have to say this the way he says it, he would spend 18 and a half years on Roe. And I'm doing that because, again, TikTok, but on DEATH Roe here in Texas for the heinous and just awful unaliving of that family, those 6 people. Not only were they to death, meaning jabbed, not only were they jabbed to their demise, but then the house that they were in was set on fire. Just go along with me now. So 6 people unalived, and then the home set on fire, and he was convicted of it. I want you to look into this case on your own. He would be later exonerated. He was only 26 years old when this arrest took place. Today, he is 59 years old. Think about that. He's 59 today. But he was 26 when this happened. Okay. He spent 82. No, he spent 18 years, on death row. The case took place, or the incident took place, in 1992. He was convicted in 1994. So 92 to 94, that's 2 years. Where y'all think he was those 2 years? Do you think he had bail? You think he had bail those 2 years? That's correct, Katie. The DA was disbarred for misconduct. That is correct. Now, are any of you from Texas on here? If you're from Texas, put Texas, especially if you are in the Houston area, but put Texas if you are from Texas, because I'm about to ask y'all somebody's name, see if y'all know them. All right. Anthony Charles Graves, he said in his own words that it felt like every day, and this is the early 2000s, late 90s, he was like, it felt like every day somebody was being by the state of Texas while he was on that road, because Texas was notorious and still is notorious for our road. Okay. All right. So Katie is from Texas. And Katie, you ever heard of Kelly Siegler? Kelly Siegler? You watched the doc, so you have. But Kelly Siegler was the toughest prosecutor in the state of Texas. And she was undefeated. She was undefeated when it came to those unaliving cases. She was undefeated. If you were charged with a capital crime and facing that row, you did not want Kelly Siegler to be the prosecutor, because 10 times out of 10, you was going to that row. She was infamous. I remember her from when I was in law school here, when I went to law school the first time, because I went twice. The second time I finished it. First time didn't fare too well. But anyway, but Kelly Siegler just was infamous. She's a bad girl. She was good at her job. She was well respected for and hated for whatever reasons. I don't know her personally, so I don't know her character. But when it came to getting those sentences, she was undefeated, right? So when Anthony Graves was on appeal, as he was appealing, a special prosecutor was assigned to his case. The state of Texas was like, we gonna keep you. So when he got his appeal, he went back to county jail. So he was removed off the road and back to county jail. And when he went to county jail, that's when the appeal took place. So this new trial. And so when the new prosecutor was assigned, they brought in a special prosecutor. They brought in the all-star. They brought in the LeBron, the Steph Curry. They brought in their Jordan. Like, they brought in the swing batter swing. They brought in Ken Griffey Jr. They brought in the best of the best, right? And when she got the case, she went through all the files. She said she read every piece of evidence in every box, in every folder, in every box. And there were like boxes on top of boxes of evidence and records and court filings and what's the word I'm looking for? Court records, meaning like what was said in court, what someone said in their testimony. She said she went through all of that. And when she finished going through it, she was like, something about this not sitting well. That was her. But she had a special investigator who was a former Texas Ranger who was her assistant. He was her investigator. And so the weapon that they believed, or the similar weapon that they believed to have been used in the jabbing of those 6 people, when her investigator got a hold of so let me pause. So Anthony Graves, one of his good friends, had given him a pocket knife. Anthony Graves would have lost his pocket knife by the time this crime happens, right? But his friend still had his exact same pocket knife. And so when this was happening. This is the same friend who put up money for his legal defense. Okay. But when they asked him, did he know Anthony Graves to ever own a knife? He said, yeah, I gave him one. What he say that for? So they were like, do you have it? And he was like, yeah, and gave it to him. And so they said because that knife fit into the jab wounds, that Anthony must have done it. But it was a pocket knife that, and some of the wounds were to the skull. So when Kelly Siegler's investigator begins investigating like that side of it, he's like, he has this knife from the friend. He's like, there's no way this was used in that case because of the mechanics of it, because of the slip on it, because after that many jabbings on 6 people, that particular piece of evidence could not be the same as what was used in the crime. If that was used, whoever used it would have had their hands would have been torn up because of the slip. Because you got to remember what happens when you jab somebody, what comes out. So because of the slip, their hands would have been terribly damaged. In the same way, the other suspect, Carter, his hands did not have those type of wounds either. Now Carter he told law enforcement that he had help and it was Anthony Graves. And the reason why he said it was Anthony Graves, supposedly he had seen Anthony Graves early in the day, so he just named him. It was just like, it's just bad luck for Graves that he was named. Okay. But he would later admit that he lied. He would later admit that he lied, and he would admit that he lied again moments before his own execution by the state of Texas, because he actually did commit the crime. So if neither suspect had wounds from from a knife, period. Otto, what was Otto's last name? I can't think of his last name, but Otto was the investigator. The investigator was like, yeah, this couldn't be it. That coupled with the evidence that, again, Kelly Siegler had reviewed. So the special prosecutor, the all-star in the state of Texas, she dropped the charges. She was like, we don't have a case against this man. This man is innocent. Is innocent. He has been wrongfully convicted. He is innocent. This man has spent 18 and a half years on death row. At any day, he could have been called up, and he is innocent. That is not an uncommon thing. And as someone said on the YouTube, that it's becoming common that we're hearing more and more about exonerations. So you have organizations, every state just about has an Innocence Project. So you hear about the Innocence Project. You hear about the Equal Justice Initiative, EJI, which is Bryan Stevenson. Some of you may have watched the movie, what's that movie? Just Mercy, starring Michael B. Jordan and Jamie Foxx. So Michael B. Jordan plays the role of Bryan Stevenson. And then Jamie Foxx plays his client who was wrongfully accused, right? It's worth us as citizens, as voters, it is worth us taking a pause and considering how our justice system works. Now, does it work correctly sometimes? Yes. Does it work incorrectly sometimes? Yes. So what do we do to make sure that it only works the correct way every time? How do we get to that? One is, y'all, we have got to stop trying to get out of jury duty. 2, we need to be more conscious and read We need to read. We need to become more knowledgeable so that we can critically think through things instead of just emotionally think. And we need to understand the foundation of our laws. So the foundation of our laws rest in our U.S. Constitution. Your state laws must not be unconstitutional. That means that they must not go against what the U.S. Constitution provides, what the Supreme Court has decided. So we must understand and be actively vocal in every step of the process. We can't become lazy when it comes to voting. We have to do our own voter education. We have to learn for ourselves. We can't be lazy. We have to do community learning. You got to have your village, and your village needs a village, and you all need to maybe divide things up and learn, so that when laws are being proposed by your legislators, that you can be a voice. Many people don't even know who their elected officials are in their state legislature. They don't know how many representatives, how many people, what I call public employees, that they have in their state legislature. All right. Many people don't know who represents them in Congress. We talk about Congress quite often in this course, right? And today's just a different kind of lecture for me with you all, right? But you need to know who your lawmakers are. You need to know who your city council member that represents the district or the area that you live in. You need to know who they are. You also need to know the other ones that are on that dais. You need to know who your mayor is, because people have their own agenda, but their agendas can get altered when pressure happens. But if we don't create the pressure, there will be no steam. And sometimes that's all we have is steam, but steam is what keeps that thing going, right? So we have to be willing to have these conversations, to learn, to discover, and to incorporate in our living with all the things when life be life, because we got a lot of responsibilities. We also have to take on our social or global responsibility and understand what is happening around us, because oftentimes what's happening around us, even though we don't see it that way, what's happening around us is trickling down and impacting us. Okay. So just keep that in mind. Be thinking of that as different things come up. So if you're just joining us, again, this is Pretty Petty Politics on YouTube or The Pretty Professor on TikTok. And we are talking about this morning or this afternoon. It is afternoon on the East Coast, but we are talking about U.S. amendments. So I've been talking about the 8th Amendment. This is a federal government course where we talk about the federal government and the structure of it, our Constitution. So we've gone through our articles. Now we're in our amendments. And pretty soon we'll get to talk about cases and how case law shapes our nation. Then we'll be able to talk about things that we're seeing. But to me, it's important to give you the foundations with examples so that we can talk about the things that are occurring, whether it's through the executive branch, an agency which works under the pleasure of the executive, whether we're talking about the courts, our federal court system, or our legislature, our federal legislature, our Congress, or it can be issues that are happening in our states. All right. So just make sure that you subscribe, follow, like, share, and follow on TikTok. Go ahead on TikTok and share this video, this live, with 5 people. And then we're going to continue with our amendments because I got to get to Reconstruction today in order to stay on my schedule. But also, if you are on YouTube and you don't already subscribe, or even if you're on TikTok and you're not subscribing, please go ahead and subscribe to Pretty Petty Politics on YouTube. We have a beautiful pink and blue logo, black, pink, and blue logo. So you'll know you're on the right page. So go ahead and make sure you like, follow, share, and subscribe. All right. So yes, that was the commercial. So now the 9th Amendment. Let's keep going. So we've talked about the 8th Amendment. And hopefully I didn't get too off where I did not explain the 8th, but we explained the 8th in the last video. I just needed to talk about it more today. All right. So next we have the 9th Amendment. And this was, I'm going to read something to you. The 9th Amendment was James Madison's attempt to ensure that the Bill of Rights was not seen as granting to the people of the United States only the specific rights it addressed. In recent years, some have interpreted it as affirming the existence of such unenumerated rights outside of those expressly, like specifically, expressly protected by the Bill of Rights. And if you're already registered for the course, that means you've clicked the YouTube and you subscribe to the YouTube and you've gone into the description on the YouTube page. There is a Google form. So if you haven't done that, go on the YouTube page, go under the description, click the Google form, complete it. Completing it requires you to include, I'm not talking to YouTube, I'm talking to TikTok. This requires you to include your email address. If you do not include your email address, you're not going to get the emails. Just simply put, you've got to put your email. And you won't believe the number of people who put things in the section for email. They'll put thank you. They'll put yes. Bruh, what are you doing? Put your email address so that I can send you materials for the course. And so for those of you who are registered, you see that in every email, I have some standard things that are always at the bottom. Those are the links that are included at the bottom. Some of them never change. And one of them is the resource for the Constitution. That is our textbook for this course, right? That is the foundation of this course. And so the link that I provide is to the Cornell Law School's Legal Information Institute. And I've been using this since I was a law student. I graduated top of my class. So I would say that this website really did help me in law school. Like seriously, it helped me in law school greatly, especially in my con law class, which I love. But one of the things that I really enjoy about this website, it gives you historical commentary. It gives you historical commentary as it relates to the specific amendments. Okay. And so what I just read to you was some of that commentary. So also, it's more of a neutral resource. Sometimes people will publish the Constitution and they will embed it with biases, right? So they may be more left-leaning or more right-leaning, or extremely left and extremely right, or extremely progressive, and that's not what you're looking for. You just need the facts, okay? And so I think this is probably one of those more middle, just here's the meat and potatoes. Like, ain't no gravy on this. It's the right amount of salt. Like, here's the meat and potatoes of it all. All right. And so that website is, who's this? LB Zeta. I need you to register for the class so I can send you the email with all the links. Okay. All the links. All right. So 9th Amendment, the enumeration. So we're going to look that word up. So someone look up the word enumeration. I'm going to put it on the screen here for YouTube, but you all look up enumeration. So we got to stop doing this. This is what we do a lot of times. We read words and not know what they mean, and we keep going, right? Especially if you matriculated through public schools in particular. And I've always been, not always, but I have all of my time in education, whether it was K-12 or higher ed, has been in public schools. So I believe in the necessity for public schools. So let me say that. However, if you matriculated in public schools between the year 2002 to today, that is not something that is overwhelmingly taught, is to look it up. Students every day, we read and stuff, they go over words, they mispronounce them, they go over words, they don't know what they mean, and they keep going. And that's why they don't have a path to understanding, is because they're not stopping and saying, hey, I don't know what this means. What does this mean? How is this pronounced? Because if you look it up, you're going to get that. You're going to see how it's structured. You're going to see how it's defined. So now the sentence itself or the passage itself makes more sense to you. So I want y'all to tell me, what does enumeration mean? All right. All right. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights. So let me start over. The enumeration in the Constitution, comma, of certain rights, comma, here go one of our favorite words, shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. Okay. All right. Y'all got that? So the enumeration in the Constitution, comma, of certain rights, comma, shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. Okay? Y'all got that? Now, what does that mean? What does it mean, the enumeration? Because that's our subject in that sentence. That's our subject. The subject of this sentence is the enumeration in the Constitution. What is enumeration? Because it's easy to just read something and keep going. Do we stop and look up the words? And Katie says her dad was big on look it up, right? My mother was an English professor, so I had to look up everything. So it was to a point, probably by the time I was 8, I didn't even bother asking her. I just pulled out the dictionary and looked it up, the physical dictionary, by the way. But what does enumeration mean? I want TikTok to tell me. What does enumeration mean? Is a complete ordered listing of all the items in a collection. Okay. Bond Lena, hi. Where's the form? The form is on YouTube. So if you go to my page here on TikTok, there's a link to YouTube. It takes you to my YouTube page, and under the description is the Google form. And just complete that Google form. Make sure you include your email. Make sure you include, if you have an underscore or whatever, make sure you include that. Make sure your email is correct. That way you will get our emails. All right. Thank you so much. All right. So thank you, Triple N, I think is your name. Thank you for that definition. All right. And Katie's dad was a history teacher. So there you go. All right. So an enumeration is a complete ordered listing of all the items in a collection. The act or process of counting something. Okay, we get some definitions here. All right. The action of mentioning a number of things one by one. So we've gotten several different definitions, but now you're starting to understand enumeration. All right. So the enumeration in the Constitution, those previous amendments. All right. Those previous amendments, right? So those things mentioned in those previous amendments of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others. So others meaning other rights retained by the people. Hopefully that makes sense. That has provided you some understanding or better understanding of the Ninth Amendment. A lot of lawmakers will talk about the Ninth Amendment, whereas the average person doesn't know the Ninth Amendment. Like, people know certain amendments. They know their Fifth Amendment. They know something about their Fifth. They know something about their First, their Second, their Fourth. and they don't know it by number. And then there's certain rights that people know, and they just know it by content or by principle, like the right to a jury, the right to confront an accuser. Y'all know y'all have a right to confront people who accuse y'all. That's why people hate to see me come, because you accuse me of something. We need to talk. We need to talk about it, because otherwise, and I said this before, I can't take you serious. Because if you can, you've got to give me the opportunity to defend myself, right? Because otherwise, people just be accusing you wildly, and there's no fairness in that. We just go down simply because we were accused. Everybody should have the right to defend themselves. All right. Angie, that's pretty fair, a fair assessment. Yes, Janaea, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Yes. No, he's talking about V.D. Fells. He's talking about the Bill of Rights specifically. All right. Because remember, we're talking the Bill of Rights, the amendments are in addition to the articles. They are literally like this earring is an amendment. All right. So if you grab this earring, you're injuring me. You're injuring my ear, you're injuring my head, you're injuring me, right? Because it's a part of, now it is a part of this Constitution. Okay. All right. So 10th Amendment. All right. So in about 7 minutes, we're going to be where I want us to be. All right. The 10th Amendment helps us to define the concept of federalism. So I've told you all federalism before. Federalism, this is the Max Shea, me, this is the definition I like to share. Federalism is the relationship between a central government, watch my hands, a central government and regional governments. All right. Federalism is the relationship between a central government and regional governments. I'll say it again. Y'all can put it in the chat. Federalism is the relationship between a central government and regional governments. And we talked about federalism when we talked about Article 4. I know I've given you this definition before. Put it on the screen for us on YouTube. But again, federalism is the relationship between a central government and regional governments. And the reason why I use my hands is because it helps you understand the concept better. All right. So it's a relationship between different governmental bodies. Okay. At its core, that's federalism. All right. So when we look at Article 4, we're seeing the relationship between different governmental bodies. So for the 10th Amendment, I'm going to keep reading. I'm going to read more of the notes here prior to reading the 10th Amendment. And if any of y'all are wondering, this is not beer. This is a Topo Chico. Just carbonated mineral water. This will be a pretty light beer too, if it were a beer. The 10th Amendment helps to define the concept of federalism, the relationship between federal and state governments. And the reason why I say central and regional, because we can see federalism in our states. So it can be the relationship between your state government and your regional governments, meaning your counties, or your central government could be your county and the regional governments could be the cities in the county. So federalism as a concept can be broken down national to state, state to counties, counties to cities, or it can be states to cities specific. All right. As federal activity has increased, so too has the problem of reconciling state and national interests as they apply to the federal powers. Here are the federal powers: to tax, to police, and to regulations such as wages and hours. You know, it's a big conversation around minimum wage, disclosure of personal information in record-keeping systems. A lot of stuff, a lot of personal information being disclosed from record-keeping systems, and laws related to strip mining. Okay. And that's like abandoned minerals or mines, I should say. All right, so let's get into the amendment itself. No, you're fine, Angie. All right, you're fine. Let me see if I'm missing any comments. All right. The powers, here's the 10th Amendment. Okay. And I want y'all to tell me what the subject of this amendment is. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, comma, nor prohibited by it to the states, comma, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Okay, or to the people. I'll read that again. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution. So the powers not delegated to the national government, our federal government, whether that's our executive, our legislative, our courts, to the federal government by the Constitution. So whatever, and they're talking, when they say by the Constitution, they're talking about those 7 articles. That's why I keep telling y'all that the Constitution is the 7 articles. It's the preamble, the 7 articles, and those signatures. Okay. Y'all got that? And thank you, Katie. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, comma. So what is our subject here? The powers. All right. The powers in the Constitution. That's our subject. All right. Nor prohibited by it. It is referring back to the Constitution, right? Nor prohibited by it to the states, comma, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Okay. 11th Amendment. 11th Amendment. The judicial powers of the United States shall not be construed to extend to any suit in law or equity, commenced or prosecuted against one of the United States by citizens of another state or by citizens or subjects of any foreign state. Okay, so it's dealing with how suits are brought in federal court. Okay. 12th Amendment. I'm trying to get through these, y'all. Now, this 12th Amendment, this is the one that's going to have y'all shaking in y'all boots, or one of them. But I'm ready to get to, and I'm almost on time. I wanted to be through this one by 12. So the 12th Amendment deals with electing a president and vice president. And it outlines how we go about doing that. Okay. Let's begin. So this is why they run together. Okay. And just as an aside, in many states, the governor and lieutenant governor run together, but not in Texas. They are not on the same ticket. But the 12th Amendment puts the president and vice president on the same ticket. Turn this this iPad towards me. All right. The electors shall meet in their respective states and vote by ballot the electors, the Electoral College. All right. The electors shall meet in their respective states and vote by ballot for president and vice president, one of whom at least shall not be an inhabitant of the same state with themselves. They shall name in their ballots the person voted for as president, and in distinct ballots, the person voted for as vice president, and they shall make distinct list of all persons voted for as president and of all persons voted for as vice president, and the number of votes for each, which list they shall sign and certify and transmit sealed to the seat of government of the United States, directed to the president of the Senate, semicolon, pause, stop. Think January 6, 2021. Okay. You're wondering where that whole thing comes from. Why is the vice president at the time, Mike Pence, why is he in Congress? Because he's the Senate president. The vice president serves as president of the Senate, and their main two functions are as follows. When it comes to the Senate, are as follows. One, if there's a tie in the Senate, they can be the tie-breaking vote. Remember, there are only 100 people in the Senate. And two, they certify the election results from the states when an election takes place for a new administration. Whether the previous administration continues, this will be their new administration, their second administration. Or if a new administration comes in, so the challenger wins versus the incumbent. Everybody get that? So as Senate president, their role is to certify, to oversee the certification. It is long, but I'm going to get through it, okay? I should be done by 12:15 Central Time, so 1:15 Eastern Time. And we're going to be done by 1 Central Time because I got a 1:30 meeting that I cannot miss, and I need to eat. All right, so, okay. The president of the Senate shall, in the presence of the Senate and House of Representatives, you wonder why Congress was in the building in the Capitol on January 6th. This is a great example. All right. Where did I stop? Oh, let me go back, because I truly lost where I was. Oh, the president of the Senate, meaning the vice president of the United States, shall, in the presence of the Senate and House of Representatives in the Capitol, open all the certificates, and the vote shall be counted, semicolon. The person having the greatest number of votes for president shall be the president, if such number be a majority of the whole number of electors appointed. So electors are based on the number of electors in a state is based on the number of seats in Congress a state has. So how many seats does your state have in Congress? Just want y'all to know that. Semicolon, and if no person have such majority, then from the persons having the highest number, not exceeding 3 on the list of those voted for as president, the House of Representatives shall choose immediately by ballots the president. But in choosing the president, the vote shall be taken by states, the representation from each state having 1 vote. So House of Representatives, Texas has 38 votes. So whatever the majority vote is, that is the 1 vote for that one candidate for Texas, should it come down to that. Hopefully y'all getting it. Okay. Semicolon, a quorum for this purpose shall consist of a member or members from 2/3 of the states, and a majority of all the states shall be necessary to a choice. And if the House of Representatives shall not choose a president whenever the right of choice shall devolve upon them before the 4th day of March next following, then the vice president shall act as president, as in the case of death or other constitutional disability of the president. So if they can't make a decision, okay. The person having the greatest number of votes as vice president shall be the vice president. If such number be a majority of the whole number of electors appointed, and if no person have a majority, then from the two highest numbers on the list, the Senate shall choose the vice president, semicolon. A quorum for the purpose shall consist of 2/3 of the whole number of the senators, so 2/3 of 100, and a majority of the whole number shall be necessary to a choice, period. But no person constitutionally ineligible to the office of president shall be eligible to that of vice president of the United States. So in order to be vice president, you also have to be eligible to be president. So the same qualifications for you to be president, you must meet that threshold as vice president. All right, I got it done. And I got it done under the amount of time I thought I would. Okay. So that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to leave that for your homework. So for your homework, I want you to review the 12th Amendment. And I want you to understand how we certify who becomes president. So it's not just, remember, we have the popular vote and we have the electoral college. And last week in my haste, I misspoke, but I corrected myself. But it's not uncommon for people to get the electors, but not get the popular. Okay. So in Trump's previous election as president, he only got the electoral college, whereas Hillary got the popular vote. In his most recent election, he got both the popular and the electoral vote, electoral college. Okay. But for your homework, I want you to understand the 12th Amendment and the operations of how we certify. Okay. How we certify. Those electoral votes, how we certify those in Congress, and what happens if they can't agree. How do we create those in the meantime? How do we come to a resolution? Okay, so that is your homework. Now let's get to the part I've been waiting on. I done clapped and scared my computer. My bad. The whole screen moved. All right. So let's go. So Reconstruction. We are in Reconstruction now. Reconstruction. Put Reconstruction in the chat. Okay, Angie, you can catch the replay. You'll start at 1:38. Since you're leaving now, start at 1:38. You can catch the replay on YouTube. All right. No. You can catch it on YouTube. 1:38. Start at 1:38. An hour and 38 minutes, and you can catch it on YouTube. All right. When you go to the YouTube, Pretty Petty Politics. All right. Reconstruction. Y'all ready? I've been waiting on this. Y'all, this is what I live for. I love learning because I'm constantly learning more and more. I love teaching about it. I love explaining it. I love just engaging it because there's so much to extract from it. And so much of what we enjoy today is directly connected to this era. All right. So in the chat, I want you to put Reconstruction. If you are just joining us, y'all still put Reconstruction while I get this commercial. If you are just joining us, first, I want to thank those who are on, whether you're watching it live or the replay. Make sure you like, share, follow, and subscribe. If you're on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, click that little bell, and you share this content. You can share it with your friends, your family, colleagues. Share. Make sure if you need to come back and review it. But this is federal government. Our text is the U.S. Constitution, and laws that have been passed through our federal courts that determine what is the law of the land, right? And so today we are in the amendments. We've previously talked about the Constitution itself, which is 7 articles. So we've talked about those. We began the amendments last week, stopping at the 8th Amendment. Today we picked back up with the 8th, and I had a passion hour or so. And now we are in the Reconstruction era. All right. So Reconstruction is the time in our U.S. history immediately following the Civil War. All right. Immediately following the Civil War. Everybody got that? Reconstruction is the period that immediately follows the Civil War. And we won't finish this today, but I definitely had to get it started. There's no way we finish this today. Not with my schedule. So we will be talking about Reconstruction for the next, this is week 5. So week 6, week 7, week 8, we will be talking about Reconstruction. So basically for 3.5 weeks, talking about Reconstruction. So because it's that important, and which you will see over the time that we talk about it, you will see just how much it impacts what we enjoy today. So Reconstruction takes place immediately following the Civil War. This is after the unaliving or the assassination of President Abraham Lincoln in January 1863. Lincoln gives the Emancipation Proclamation, emancipating enslaved people here in the United States. In this course, we do not call people slaves. People are not slaves. People can be enslaved. Slavery is a real thing, but people are not slaves. Okay, people can be enslaved, though. That you are not your status. That's why we don't call ourselves poor or broke. We are not our status, if that is your status. Okay, we mind our words. All right. So during the period of Reconstruction, or prior to the period of Reconstruction, Abraham Lincoln had given his speech and emancipated enslaved people. And because of that speech, this guy decided that would be the last speech he would ever give, and he unalived President Lincoln. Okay, Civil War goes on, and during the Civil War, you have had the Union. We are a union. Let me give us some language, because I realize through conversation and through teaching that people just don't realize this. So there are a lot of names, a lot of words to describe the United States. So we are a republic. We have, we fight for democracy. So those two words, we think of political parties, we think Republican and Democratic. We are a republic. We have a form of government, democracy, democratic. I'm not talking about party. We're not talking about Republican and Democrat. We're talking about the union itself. So the union is, or was, let me start with history. The Union was created by the U.S. Constitution. Okay. The Union was created by the U.S. Constitution. And it was created because we talked about this. We talked about Daniel Shea and his revolt when Daniel Shea and the other farmers revolted in Massachusetts after having fought in the Revolutionary War, because the Revolutionary War was the independence from England from the British. The Revolutionary War was so that we could have our own and be independent. That's why we have the Declaration of Independence, right? As a nation. The very first constitution written was the Articles of Confederation. The Articles of Confederation were weak, and so they were disposed of, and they were disposed of because they had been exposed by Daniel Shea and the farmers, and also because there were needs like to define and create trade and just to make a stronger, more defined nation. So after seeing how weak the Articles of Confederation were, a meeting was held in Annapolis. I always get Annapolis and Appomattox mixed up because they're both A's and they're in that same region of the country. Virginia and Maryland, the DMV. But anyway, but after that meeting, they decide they're going to have a constitutional convention. And again, I'm talking about the Union, so I can talk about Reconstruction. Okay. So, Jazz, this is the beginning of the lecture, baby. You done got way ahead. Let me teach. Okay. You done got way ahead. And I don't want anyone to read that and be thrown off from what I'm saying. So, after it's okay. After the Revolutionary War, or during, because the Revolutionary War had not ended quite when the Declaration of Independence was made, by the way. It kind of lingered a little bit longer. But anyway, but they decided that they were going to call a constitutional convention. And they did so in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And when that was held, a union was created. That union consisted of the union, the coming together. I don't have enough fingers, but the coming together of those 13 colonies, which would become 13 states. So they would no longer be called colonies, they would be called states. So the union, the coming together to form a nation. All right. I hope that makes sense. All right. So the union is the actual nation. So yes, we are a republic, we are a democracy, but we are a union. Hence, United States. Okay. We are a union. Put union in the chat if you follow along. If you don't follow along, put and I'll go over it in a different way. If you follow along, go ahead and put union in the comments. So I know that I've made that clear. All right. Perfect. Okay. So union. Pull up my stuff. So the union, aka the nation, the United States, led by the president, Abraham Lincoln, the union was moving towards leaving the practice of enslaving people. Okay. Thank you, VJ. Moving from the practice of enslaving people. So because of that, some states that were a part of the union, they withdrew from the union. Several states withdrew from the union, and they deemed themselves as the Confederacy, or they would become known as the Confederacy, or the Confederate States. Okay. And they created, they all had their own declarations individually. In Texas, it's called the Declaration of Causes. You can look it up and you will see very clearly, it's not a long document. You see very clearly the reason for it. And that is consistent throughout each of these former states that pulled themselves out of the Union. When you look at their declarations individually, you will see it's very clear as to why they withdrew. And it's the enslavement. They did not want to end slavery. Okay. They had their own documents. Okay. They had their own documents. So you can look up all of these. Declaration of Causes is what Texas, that was their declaration for their cause of leaving the Union. Okay. These are real documents. These are official government documents. You can look these up state by state to see them. All right. This is U.S. government. This is U.S. history. This is federal government. This is the reality of our history. This is the consequences, the implications of our history. That's what we're exploring right now. So states declared why they were leaving the Union. Someone name a state, and I'm gonna look up your state. So it was just under a dozen states that withdrew. All right. So what they did was, and I hate this, I understand this word, but I hate the way it sounds because I don't want you to think it's the word that it sounds like, because it's not. Succeeding. I'm succeeding in life. Right? So it's not the SUCC, it's the SECEDE, to succeed. SECEDE. Okay. So of the states that y'all named, Florida, my home state, succeeded January 10th, 1861. And let's see, what's the name of the document for Florida? Florida's succession document. Ordinance of Succession, 1861. So if you're, see, y'all naming northern states. Now South Carolina was the first. Ooh, they was terrible. They was out the gate with it. Okay. So Florida's is Ordinance of Succession. Let's do South Carolina. South Carolina was South Carolina Declaration of Succession, 1860. Okay. Georgia's was Ordinance of Succession. Ordinance of Succession. Michigan wasn't a part of it. I think Louisiana's was just an ordinance, so a succession ordinance. All right. So I've gone over a few of them. And you remember, these are southern states. That's why you hear the North versus the South. The real reality is it was the United States and an enemy. Because our Constitution, it says protect against enemies. Okay. You know, so as a nation, the Union was fighting a threat, because once you leave the Union, you are now foreign to the Union. Y'all got that? You're not foreign to the Union when you leave the Union. Well, Nikki, I'm glad I was able to share it. All right. There you go. Foreign or domestic. So now they are foreign. Domestic is the union. You're a part of the union, right? You leave my household, you are a stranger danger. Don't you be walking in here. You don't have a key no more. The lock is changed, right? You leave, this not your home no more. You are an enemy. You can't freely come and go as you please. All right. And so the Confederates, all right, the Confederacy, all right, there's a website, battlefields.org, and if you click learn and go under primary sources, you will see the succession acts for all 13 of the Confederate states. So like you can click the name and it will pull up their succession document. So South Carolina, Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, Texas, Virginia, Arkansas, North Carolina, Tennessee, Missouri, and Kentucky. Okay. Told y'all I love this stuff. I love it because you got to know the history so you can see the signs when that history. Yeah, I be thinking people prophetic. They don't really just be prophetic. We just read. And reading, what the Bible say? For people perish for lack of what? Knowledge. Oh, y'all didn't think we was gonna have a little Bible study? Y'all missed the prayer at the beginning when this YouTube was glitching. But yeah, knowledge, reading, understanding. That's why I'm like, you gotta understand what the words mean, right? Understanding history could make someone seem prophetic, but in reality, they are able to track social habits and perhaps can say, hey, if we don't do something, this right here is going to happen because the writing is on the wall. Well, the writing is only on the wall if you're familiar with that writing. Like if you've seen it before, if you've heard it before. The writing can be on the wall and somebody else can't see it because they're ignorant to it. That doesn't mean they're stupid. They're ignoring it because they don't even realize what it is. Okay. It's just like someone can see you and they don't recognize your value or they don't even know who you are. And they, like on social media, every once in a while you get these corny dramas and they might last for like 2 minutes and it's some wealthy person, but people are mistreating them. They don't perceive who they are. Right? They just think they're nobody. That's how sometimes the writing on the wall is. People see it, but they don't realize what it is. And so they just keep functioning or disregarding it. So a lot of times we disregard the writing on the wall because we have a lack of knowledge. Okay. So I just told y'all where you can find all of those succession documents. I just gave you a website, battlefields.org. I will include it in the next email because, again, we're going to be talking about Reconstruction for the next few weeks here in this class. All right. So the Union. You had 13 states remove themselves from the Union. They said, we are breaking up. We no longer go together. Not only do we not go together no more, you are my enemy. I hate you. And I hope that you never are successful, that you never do anything good a day in your life. You can go to HE double hockey sticks. Okay. And the union's like, you left, you're no longer welcome. And we're going to stand up. We're going to fight and we're going to protect this union. And so the Confederacy and the Union, they get to fighting, right? They get to fighting. And this is what we call the Civil War. If you're still with me, go ahead and put Civil War in the chat. Civil War in the chat. Y'all, we're at our 2-hour mark or just shy of our 2-hour mark. We got 20 more minutes. And then I'm going to take questions for 10 minutes. And then we're logging off right at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. All right. Perfect. Civil War is in the chat. So continue to put Civil War. For those of you who are just joining us, welcome. This is federal government. Make sure that you follow, like, and share here on TikTok. Make sure that you follow, like, and share. Generally, we have federal government class on Thursdays at 10:20. The class opens, unlocks, and at 10:30 we start. That's typically. Sometimes classes move to Friday. It just depends on what I have scheduled. So that is when class meets. But if you follow, you'll be able to see the calendar. I usually put the class up a day or two before the link to the live, a day or two before the class starts on TikTok. But you can also, and you should do this. There is a YouTube link on my TikTok page. Click that link or just go to TikTok, go to YouTube, Pretty Petty Politics. Pretty Petty Politics on YouTube. If you go to that site or to that channel, there is a subscribe button. Click that subscribe button. But also under the description for that page, there is a Google form. Complete that Google form with your email address so that you can receive the course materials and any updates on a weekly basis. Sometimes I'm late with sending it. Like today, I sent it right before class, but I did send it. And I provided an apology because life be lifing. But make sure you register, but you got to include your email address, because if you include your email address, then you're going to get the information. Some people register and they don't include their email address. Why on earth would you do that? But thank you. But I need you to put your email address. Okay. So again, like, follow, share. Go ahead and invite a few people to join us. YouTube, you can invite folks to join us too, because we got about 17 more minutes, and then we're going to take Q&A, and then we're going to close at 1. Okay. So the Civil War takes place. It's the North versus the South, as we are commonly engineered to repeat the North versus the South. But honestly, it is the Union, the United States, versus this new enemy, this new foreign enemy who shares borders with us, right? Y'all realize that they share borders, but it's this new enemy known as the Confederacy, okay? The Union versus the Confederacy. Because if you change the shape of the language and call it North versus South, you confuse people. Call a thing what it is, all right? The Union, the United States versus the Confederacy. We are a union of states. We are in a marriage. We go together real bad. Real bad. As Young Miami say now, who she said it to. Whew. But it was cute when it was said. But anyway, we go together. The union. So the purpose of them succeeding, SECED, that succession, SE, that SE, not SU. All right. So the purpose of succeeding was primarily 99.99999% based on the Union moving through the president of the United States, Abraham Lincoln, from slavery. Remember, January 1st, 1863, he emancipates enslaved people. All right. This is during the war. All right. And one of the reasons why he emancipates people don't want to talk about this, but one of the reasons why he emancipates people, because he knew that was going to help build up his military. It was strategic. It was a strategy. So all that celebrate, you need to know how we were being used to. It was a strategy. It wasn't that he just thought so highly of us, but it was certainly a strategy. Okay. I need for us to understand that. Okay. I need for us to understand that was strategic. Okay. That was strategic. All right. So during this time, they're fighting. The fighting is taking place. Battles are being won and lost all over. In 1865, put 1865 in the chat. 1865. In 1865, the war is, it's kind of clear that the Union is kicking ass and taking names and winning, and that the war is done. Okay. 1865. So in 1865, the Civil War lasts 4 years. What's important about this is, hold on, what happened to my link? Oh, what's important about this? Succession started before the war. Succession started before the war. Okay, succession started in 1860. South Carolina succeeded in 1860. South Carolina succeeded in 1860. The war is 1861 to 1865. I'm going to repeat that. South Carolina succeeded in 1860. The war is 1861 to 1865. Okay. And I haven't even gotten to Reconstruction. I'm still at the war. That's why we're going to be talking about this for several lectures. Several lectures, we're just talking about Reconstruction. Yes, we're in the midst of talking about amendments, but we're going to do that through the framework of Reconstruction as we talk about amendments. So for the next few weeks, we're only going to talk about Reconstruction. All right. Okay. So 1861 to 1865. 1861 to 65. 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation is declared. And that was what? What was that? What did I tell you that was? The Emancipation Proclamation. And if you put in my chat, freeing of the slaves, 1, they were not slaves, they were enslaved, but 2, you would be wrong. What was that happened in 1863? To build up the Union Army. That was strategy. That was strategy. Yes, that was strategy on behalf, or done through Lincoln. That was strategy. There's a movie. It came out probably 50. I don't remember when that movie came out. Maybe it's more than 10 years ago. Maybe about 15 or more years ago. And it was about Lincoln. I need to find that movie so I can send it to y'all in my next email. But I'll think of it and I'll send it. But anyway, I think it's important to note that prior to the war, people had already succeeded. That's one thing. I think it's also important to note that as a strategy, Lincoln went on ahead and emancipated enslaved people. Okay, I think that's important. And in the proclamation in itself it was called Lincoln. Thank you, Nicholas. The Emancipation Proclamation itself is something that he proclaimed. It did not make it the law, like an executive order. It can have the effect of a law, right? There's a video, if you go on my TikTok, in my playlist, there's a video about executive orders. Okay, go back and watch that at a later time. All right, and make sure you're following, guys. Make sure you're following. Make sure you're subscribing. All right. But 1863 January, we get that. 1865, it's starting to wrap up, and the Union clearly is winning. 1865, is when we are in what is now the beginning of old SHIT, like we toe up. We done toe up the country. I mean, toe up from the flow up the country. And now you have states declaring that their enslaved people are free. Now, I'm going to talk about two states. Pull up this file. So most people have heard of the phrase Juneteenth. It was a proclamation. It's a proclamation. It's like saying today is Superman Day in the city of Houston. You're just proclaiming it, right? You wrote it down, you proclaimed it. Some people might take it serious and others might not. And we know the others did not. Okay. One did because he knocked them down forever, ever, after he made that proclamation. What's his name? JWB. Wilkes Booth, John Wilkes Booth. So in 1865, you start seeing states saying, hey, okay, game over. We're going to free these enslaved people that we don't want to free, but we're going to. So often everyone talks about Texas being the last, which they were, the last state in the Union to have declared it, or not declared it, but to have freed enslaved people, air quotes, to have freed enslaved people on what we call Juneteenth, June 19th, 1865. In Florida, it was May 20th or either May 21st. I always get the 2 days confused, but it was May 20th or 21st, 1865, when Florida did so. And so we always looked at Texas like, oh, y'all just last, but who else was last right along with them? Okay. Take that how you will. But look up when those 13 succeeding states, I want you to look that up, put that in your notes. Like, let's go back and look up when, and the only reason why I know Florida is because that's my home state. So I think it's important to know about your own state, right? Look up to see when those other 11 states, because I just named 2, when they oblige the emancipation of Black people. Look up to see when that was for those other 11 states. So we got Florida, we got Texas, but when did the others do it? Texas did it June 1865, Florida did it May. Look up the others. You're going to see a lot of names back to back in succession, right? One after the other. I want you to look at that. I think it's important to note. I think it's important to note that in your psyche, to be aware, to be fully aware of that. Okay. So earlier that year in January, Congress, the Union, Congress passed the 13th Amendment. Congress, we talked about this. Congress consists of 2 chambers, a House of Representatives made up of representation based on population, and the Senate, the second chamber, made up of representatives based on equal representation. Okay. So Congress, both chambers, passed a law known as the 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment passes through Congress at the very top of 1865. At the beginning of 1865, Congress passes the 13th Amendment. How does an amendment become law? I've talked about this. It's in one of those short videos in that playlist. I know we've talked about it in our classroom, in our virtual global classroom. We talked about it when we talked about Article 5. Yeah, Article 5. I had to count in my head right quick. We talked about it when we talked about Article 5. Okay. So what comes after? Nope, is not 2/3 Congress. That is not the answer. Congress has already passed it. I just explained it. It passed the House of Representatives and it passed the Senate. It passed Congress. What is required to make an amendment law? This is where y'all need to go back through your notes. I don't do this just to entertain y'all. This is for educational purposes. What is required? I gave you the hint. I already gave you a head start. I told you Article 5 of the Constitution. Nope. President don't have nothing to do with it. And the president, by the way, at this time is Andrew Johnson. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. I always have a little grim joke about that. Thank you, Janaea and Kira. Thank you. Thank you for your answers. I'm looking at YouTube. It's not Article 1 and it's not 2/3. Y'all keep this 2/3. They be having y'all in a chokehold with 2/3. It's like C on a multiple choice test. Anytime you say what's next or how many, and you talking about government, people gonna always be like, C, 2/3, and that's not it. 2/3 be having us in a chokehold. All right, I'll go ahead and give you the answer because I'm getting it on both platforms now. 3/4 of the states must do what? Ratify it. 3/4 of the states. That's why I said Article 5. Article 5 is about amendments. Amendments have to be ratified. So and we just went over Article 5 last week. Y'all hurt my feelings. I'm giving y'all this good for free. All right. This good, rich information. I need y'all to take notes and like study. It's good to come to class. It's cool to come to class, but very few people, she said she had to skim a little further. Very few people can come to class and just hear the information and retain it. Good students gonna take notes. Some people are just different. They made different. They can hear it and capture it, and they good. They don't never have to crack open a book or read or study further. But I need y'all to take notes, and after you take the notes, I need y'all to find some time. We spend it on average 2.5 hours in class, so y'all need to find 2.5 hours during the week. It's 168 hours in a week. Y'all need to find about 2 to 2.5 hours during the week to review and to study and prepare. Okay, you got to. That's the key to college. If any of you are enrolled in college thinking about going back to college for another degree or starting as a non-traditional student, that is what separates you from the rest of the group, is how you incorporate studying. You come to class every day. I have students come, and that'd be their thing. I didn't miss a day of class. Well, baby, you missed all the days of studying, clearly. Okay. So I need you all to make sure that if you're in school or you're thinking about going to school, you have a child in school or a spouse in school, know about a school, just anybody, make sure you tell them for every class hour you're taking, you need to incorporate that weekly in your studying. So when I was in college and undergrad, just about every semester I took not just a full load, I took 18 hours because, baby, I was trying to be done when I was done. So by the time I hit my senior year, I was basically in school just to kick it because I had taken all my requisite courses, right? I may have had 1 or 2. So now I can take the classes I want to take, the classes that would help me. But I had 18 hours every semester. That meant every week I had to find 18 hours of studying. So you divide that across 6 days a week. That's 3 hours a day of studying, because each class credit is 3 hours. It sounds like a lot, but when you break it down, and we devote so much time doing this, right? Scrolling, right? Scrolling on social media when we could be scrolling through some books or through some websites, edifying ourselves, learning more. I always show y'all books in here. Last night I did a video on TikTok. There's a book. I don't know what that book is. It's on the other side of the house, but reading is very fundamental. Studying is too. So I need y'all to make sure you study, because I just went over that last week. Now I wasted 5 minutes of y'all time fussing. So I'm going to give it back to you. So we're going to go. Well, I wasted. Yeah. I'll give it back to you. We're going to end at 1:10 Central Time. 1:10. All right. So let's go. We got 18 minutes. No, we're going to end at 1:05 so we can be done at 1:15 with the Q&A. That's fair. Okay. So where was I? So in 1865, Congress passes the 13th Amendment in January. And by December of 1865, 3/4 of the states had ratified that 13th Amendment. And the 13th Amendment reads as follows. Section 1, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist. There go that word again. Shall exist within the United States, or any place subject to their jurisdiction, period. So let's unpack that. Okay. Let's unpack that. Okay. So slavery nor involuntary servitude, meaning forcing somebody to work, right? Involuntary servitude. Basically, white people, a lot of Irish people were indentured servants. So they were in voluntary servitude. Okay. Except as a punishment for crime whereof the party had been duly convicted. That's why slavery, you hear people say slavery is still legal in this country. It is. It's called our penal system, our prison system, penal, prison, punishment. That system, that real system, that's why earlier when we were talking about the Eighth Amendment, that's why I kept talking about pleas, because when you take a plea, you have now been convicted. So if you're not guilty, you did not commit the crime, don't take the plea, but people will push the plea on you. We just saw that with ASAP Rocky, ASAP Rocky. All right. We just saw that, right? He had an opportunity for a plea. People were like, he needed to take the plea. He needed to take the plea. He needed to take the plea. His attorney's like, we're not taking no plea. He was like, I'm not taking no plea. Kalief Browder refused the plea. Kalief Browder did not have the support or the financial strength that Rocky has. But Kalief Browder, his mother, poured into him some discipline, there was something in him that knew better than to admit to something he didn't do. Now, later, did it have emotional and mental impact on him? Absolutely, because of the nature of what he experienced while incarcerated for a crime he did not commit, while not even convicted. So now we're having a full circle moment about the connectivity of these things, the importance of these things, and the necessity for this space, this educational space. All right. So neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except, so the exception to the 13th Amendment is slavery can't exist unless the person, you can't enslave me unless I have been, or a person has been, is being punished for a crime where they have been duly convicted. And they use the word shall have been. So it's a requirement. The only way that they can return to slavery or be enslaved is if they have been convicted for a crime. And that conviction is their punishment. All right. And this shall exist. So slavery can exist unless there's that exception. And it can exist because of that exception. That second shall, that's what it's saying. The second shall is saying it can exist unless that exception is applicable, and it can exist because of that exception in the United States or any place subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, Washington, D.C., Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, all of our mini territories, Guam. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. Section 2. Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. 13th Amendment, ladies and gentlemen. And we could do a year's worth of lectures on this amendment alone. And next week, we're going to delve into that 13th Amendment. And we're going to look at the criminal justice system today. We're going to look at criminal justice system of 100 years ago. And we're also going to look at the criminal justice system immediately following Reconstruction. Okay. We're going to look at that. We're going to look at the establishment of laws known as Black codes. Okay. Laws known as Black codes. Do me a favor, if you're here on TikTok, I have a subscription goal or a goal of 10. So if you could, I'm at 4 out of 10. If y'all could run that up for me. If y'all could run that up for me, give me some, give some hearts. If y'all could run that up for me. All right, I'm 5 out of 10. If y'all could run that up for me, please, please, please. And so while y'all are doing that, let's continue. I'm going to stop with the 13th Amendment at the reading for today. Next week, we're at 6 out of 10. Next week, we're going to pick back up with the 13th Amendment. Remember, we are in Reconstruction. We are in Reconstruction. So what's happening in the country right now, you have Andrew Johnson as president. He was the vice president of Abraham Lincoln. He was his vice president. Okay. And so he took the presidency after the unaliving or the assassination of President Lincoln. Okay. And so next week, we're going to delve into that Johnson administration, how he managed Reconstruction, how he began to infuse his own ideologies around that era. Thank you. Thank you. I'm at 8 out of 10. 2 more, y'all. Let's get me there. So we're going to look at that. We're going to delve into the 13th Amendment next week. Next week is week 6. Next week is week 6, y'all. All right. Week 8 is, let me look at my calendar. Sorry. I just want to make sure I'm right about this. So we are in week 5 now, week 6, week 7, week 8. Week 8 is spring break for me. Week 8, we're going to have class one day, but every day we're going to have another during the week of spring break. So the week of March 17th for 4 days during that week. So we'll have class that Friday. Class will be that Friday, but Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we're going to have like a marathon of mini sessions. Okay. And during that week, I will announce what book we're going to read together so we can start our little book discussion. All right. So now I'm going to stop lecturing, give you back some of your time. Any questions? We got about 12 minutes of questions, Q&A. So what questions do you have for me? All right. I'm at 9 out of 10. Thank you so much. I'm at 9 out of 10. What questions do you have for me? No questions? This is weird. Thank you. Thank you for the gifts. Thank you for the follows. Thank you for subscribing to YouTube. Thank you for the follows. Thank you for the shares, the views. Make sure you go back and watch that playlist on the TikTok page of those mini lectures. They're about 9 to 10 minutes each. But no questions. Y'all gonna give me back my time. Okay, so let me say this, and this is hard for me to say, but people ask, so I'm a share. People have asked about how they can support me financially. People have asked me for my Cash App, my PayPal. I'm not giving y'all that. I just don't feel right doing that, but I will sell you something. So I do have a recipe book on my page, is my website. If you purchase it, I will send you the ebook. If you want the physical copy, it's through Amazon. And I know I've got pushback about having products on Amazon, but Amazon, by selling it on Amazon, it can be printed through one of their vendors, and the vendor is actually local to Texas, so it can be printed by them and then they ship it. So it really is a drop ship. So I'm able to produce the book, so that's why it's on Amazon. Please do not be like, oh, you can use another platform. Give me another platform that will print and ship, where I will still have a profit, and then I will use it. But if you don't want to support Amazon, but you do want to support me, if you purchase it from my website directly, it's a collection of recipes. It's called Not by Bread Alone, Taking the F's of Life. And so you can purchase that from my website as an ebook, and I will email it to you as you purchase. Okay. So just wanted to share that. Not by Bread Alone. Let me get a copy of it and show you all. Where's my step stool? Y'all, I can't even reach them. And I don't know where my step stool is. So instead, let me do this. Let me show it. Oh, I can't show it to you on that phone. Where's my other phone? Oh, thank y'all for asking. Where is... Yeah, there's too many pictures, even in my favorites. I need a new folder. Sorry for the delay. I can't multitask. But it's called Not by Bread Alone. by July McShay. It's peach, and it has a bowl of pho on the cover. I do have pho packs, so you can make your own pho at home. I actually made pho last night for dinner. I probably make it several times a month. Okay. I'm almost back in my favorites. All right, so this is the book. How can I show that on? There we go, on YouTube. This is the book. That's a way for Petra said, would you be willing to do one of those buy me a coffee options as well? I just say order the book, do the ebook. It's $9.99. Do the ebook, and that's coffee and gas to get there. Coffee and a little pastry. And thank you all for the support. It's really hard to ask. Like, I don't mind selling my book, outselling my book or posting, but it's really hard just to. I'll sell you everything else, but when it comes to me, and because this is something that I enjoy doing, and I'm working on it, working on this part of me. I don't think education should cost, but people have asked how they can support. So that's how you can support, but you still getting something out of it. And in addition to the class, you're still getting a collection of recipes and anecdotes. The anecdotes that come with the recipe collection. Some of my favorite dishes are in there. There will be another edition coming up soon. So I have a question. When we go over the 14th Amendment, do you recommend us to watch the documentary? I really don't like that documentary. You talking about the one with Will Smith, the 14th? It doesn't capture the full essence of the amendment. It seemed rushed. It definitely seemed like a play off of the 13th, but the 13th did what it was supposed to do, the documentary, the 13th, which explores the 13th Amendment. Oh, thank you, Metal Jane. Oh, thank you so much. The 14th just doesn't do it for me. Now, the 13th, absolutely. Ava DuVernay's, absolutely. The 14th, I feel like they rushed that and they didn't put in what they could have. So, should you watch it? Yeah, but I don't think that you get out of it what you should get out of it. Yeah. Yeah. No, I know you're talking about the 14th, the one starring Will Smith, where he's like, he opens it up, right? But the 13th, the one by Ava DuVernay, I think that is, if they could do one on the 14th like that, and I don't care who produces it, right? But if one could be formatted around the 14th, similarly to the 13th, I think that would be much more beneficial. Now, here's a documentary or a series I do recommend, but it will require you to do this. And I've said this before, and we got about 5 more minutes. Please support your local PBS and NPR, right? Your public media. Support your local public media, not your NBC, CBS, Fox, your local channels, but the local media, meaning your NPR, your PBS station. If you go to pbs.org, because their location thing is on, it's going to pop up and it's going to ask you, is this your local station? And you can Google it to see what your local station is. You say yes, and then it's going to give you their website or information that's also PBS, but also for that local community. I want you to become a donor, become a monthly donor, $5. Just get that local station $5. And here's what you'll unlock with that donation. One, you'll be supporting local media, local programming, so that little kids can still get Sesame Street. Baby, because they forever coming for Big Bird. So you can watch good coverage during elections, unbiased coverage during elections. But also you get access to the documentaries. You get access to the documentaries, the series, and I've mentioned a few, like last Sunday, the Wilmington documentary about Wilmington, North Carolina, the Wilmington Massacre. It debuted last Sunday via PBS, right? It's in your email. If you've already registered, it's in your email. If you have not registered or you did not include your email, once you register, I will send it again. But they have a documentary. I say all that to say, historian Henry Louis Gates Jr., also known as Skip Gates. Skip Gates has a series on there that came out maybe 2018, 2019, called Reconstruction, America After the Civil War. Okay. And I'll include it in my next email because I was already going to talk about it. But that series, you can capture it on YouTube. Now, the YouTube is about 3 hours and 40 minutes. So about 4 hours. It's about a 4-hour documentary, just shy of 4 hours. The YouTube version of it, the full one, it starts with, what's his name? His name starts with a J. Oh, I cannot think of his name right now. When you see it on YouTube, it's going to have his face. But it opens up with the June 17th, the story of what happened on June 17th, 2015 at Mother Emanuel Church. That's the opening scene. But it traces the history of the period of Reconstruction, and it reconnects back to Mother Emanuel, the history of that church, Mother Emanuel, which was attacked by Dylann Roof back in June of 2015. That is a documentary that I highly recommend. If you want it in the best quality with all the parts, you need to subscribe to PBS at minimum by donating $5 a month. All right. Public media relies on federal funds as well as the public donating. The current administration, just as they did in their previously, has targeted and said that they want to reduce the funding or absolve all the funding to PBS and National Public. So you want to make sure that you're supporting. All right. So it's Reconstruction, America After the Civil War. And I'm probably messing that last part up. But Reconstruction, just Google Reconstruction, Skip Gates or Henry Louis Gates, Reconstruction. All right. And it has some of the top historians. I mean, like top tier historians in the United States, including Eric Foner, Foner, who is an expert on the period of Reconstruction. He's written more books about Reconstruction probably than anybody else. So I would say that would be a great place to start. Okay, it is 1:15. It has been a rich class with y'all. I thank you all so much. Love y'all. I pray that y'all have a great week. Please like and share. Please share the YouTube so people who missed the live, you want them to know, or if you missed part of it, go back and watch it on YouTube, Pretty Petty Politics. Make sure you subscribe if you're not subscribed, and make sure you register for the class if you have not done so by clicking the Google form under the description on the YouTube page. All right. That is it. Thanks. Bye. I'm going to stay with y'all, YouTube. All right. So thank you all once again for joining. Usually I end early with y'all and stay on with TikTok, but I want to thank you all for joining. I thank you all for supporting and reviewing and sharing. I see the data, so I know this information is reaching people. I said to them previously, and I'll say to you all, I try to stay in the middle of the lane and not interject biases, but because this is not the schoolhouse, this is literally my house, I will interject some biases just because I'm just that committed to them. And bias is not necessarily wrong. Bias is just your opinion. That's your opinion shaped based on your experiences and your knowledge and your ideology, right? But I still, even in that, where I do infuse it, sometimes I will strongly try to just present the facts and what the Constitution says so that you can formulate your own. So, having said that, I need you to really lean into becoming a good critical thinker so that you can hear what I'm saying, but you also will go look at the actual documents, go look at the actual cases, go delve for an hour instead of scrolling, scrolling on these devices. You'll take some time to go read and discover for yourself, right? You'll take some time to look at legitimate resources. Typically, you want to start with a primary resource. Our text for this class is the Constitution. That is the primary resource of all primary resources, right? Especially for a course like this. Looking at court cases, particularly federal court cases. So we will utilize a website called Oyez. I think I might have a banner for it. I don't. So let me make you a banner right quick. So utilizing this website, you will be able to, as I'm naming, and I will always let you know if something is a Supreme Court case or if it's not. If it's a Supreme Court case, you can find the facts of the case, the main question, and a summary of the ruling on this website. Okay. And this website is supported by a lot of institutions and nonprofit organizations to give the people a resource to go without having to read long, what do you call it, decisions. It gives you a very compact but informative view of why the Supreme Court ruled, and it will typically tell you how the court ruled. Was it a unanimous, meaning all 9 justices? Was it 8-1? Was it 7-2? Was it 5-4? Right? And those very close rulings, we have to pay attention to it. The closer the ruling, the more likely that there will be a chance of overturning it. So, or not a chance of, because any case can be overturned depending on who's on the court, but the likelihood of there being a push for it. Maybe I say that. But anyway, because there's a push for one that was unanimously decided. And that is coming out of either Tennessee or Kentucky right now with a new law where people can refuse to marry people if it goes against their beliefs. So like, say you have a justice of the peace, like an elected official, right? An official can refuse to marry people if it goes against their beliefs. And so that could be same sex or it can be interracial. They can refuse to marry. Now, what if that's the only person outside of a church, outside of ministry, that's the only person who does marriages in that rural area or in that county? Now people are without the ability to marry unless they can travel to somewhere else or unless they can afford to pay a private person to marry them. Now, private people can marry people. You can become an ordained minister by online. I became one in 2020, right? You can become an ordained minister. An ordained minister can marry you whether they charge you or not charge you, but you got to know who one is, right? But I say all that to say that law is going to go, once it is approved, you're going to see it challenged in the federal courts, and it's going to probably make its way to the U.S. Supreme Court, thus facing off with a previous Supreme Court decision from 1967 or 68, known as Loving versus Virginia, when the Supreme Court unanimously ruled that marriage was a fundamental right. Unanimously, meaning all 9 justices agreed that marriage was a fundamental right. This is the case of Richard and Mildred Loving, right? They wanted to be married. The state of Virginia was like, no. The state of Virginia threatened them with imprisonment, meaning they were going to lock them up. They moved to Washington, D.C. They got married in Washington, D.C., but they were away from their families. So they were like, we're going home. They were again pressed about their marriage. And so they filed suit in federal court after Mildred Loving reached out to the then T-H-E-N, I'm getting tongue twisted, then U.S. Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy Sr., not to be confused with his son, reached out to him for help. And he was like, girl, I can't take this case, but here's some attorneys who may be able to help you. And so those attorneys took the case to federal court. So they went through district court. They took it to court. And the reason why I had to go to federal court is because they were suing the state of Virginia. So you don't sue the state in state court. that on its face, it was a federal court. So they had to file it in federal court. So we will talk about cases. We will definitely be talking about Loving versus Virginia. We're going to be digging into these cases, but we're going to dig into them under the applicable constitutional amendments which relate to them. So with Loving, when we talk about it, we're going to be talking about one of these Reconstruction amendments. So that's why I say what happened under Reconstruction, the implications of it throughout history ever since are huge, even today. So hopefully that makes sense to you all. I got a couple of comments. All right. Katie says she just finished Devil in the Grove. All right, perfect. So she just finished that and she's waiting on her copy of this, Framed. All right. And she says she's also ordained. Shout out to you, Katie. So these are some of the books that I've recommended for reading, for understanding, for getting a better idea of how government works in very real time. We always think of government as these government buildings, or we think of Congress. We think of elected officials as government. Government is how the law is working, how the law is being applied. Is the law even being applied? Are people obstructing the law? Are they breaking the law to do things? Right. And so when I offer books like this, I'm not offering it just because I want you to read more. I want to create this reading list. I mean, I do want you to read more, and I do believe in reading lists, but I'm offering it to you because I want you to see how government is working or isn't working, and then has to be corrected through more government action, right? Through correction. How do we get there? And these books offer that in a very real way. All right. So that's it. That's all I got. Please email me if you have questions. Shoot me an email. If there's something you want to cover, shoot me an email. If we need to have a subsection, if we need to do like a study session, we can do that. We can organize that where we can come into a classroom setting. So not comments. I don't mind doing a Zoom with my students. That means you're registered for the course, not just anybody can join. You're registered for the course, but we will stream it to YouTube so that others can see it. All right. I don't mind doing that. We're not going to do that a lot though, because I don't have time for that all the time, but we can do that if the topic is big enough and is fitting. I got to run because I got a 1:30 I have to jump on. And so that's it. Peace out, y'all. I hope this has been good to you all. See you next time. Bye-bye.